It's another beautiful Monday within the Federation of St Kitts and Nevis. We want to say good morning to all our listeners and viewers across the platform. You're listening to WINN FM 98.9, and you're in tune to another episode of Voices. Another episode of Voices. My name is Socrates. I'll be your host for today's program. Okay, so as I was saying, welcoming you one and all to another episode of Voices. My name is Socrates. I'm host for this program, and within the studio today we have a guest who's been here oftentimes, Ras Kalonji, and he wants to speak about the storming of the U.S. Capitol and most things out in the U.S. happening right now. As the show progresses, of course, you're invited to make your calls and make your contributions, suggestions. We have a nice flow of, dialogue. That's what's happening around the world. Here in St Kitts, it's a beautiful Monday. The weather's fine. I hope the same prevails across the Caribbean. And wherever you are in the world, we want to wish you a very pleasant Monday. Okay? So Ras Kalonji is today's guest, and we're going to go straight to the microphone and hear what he has to say.
Yes, Brother Socrates, I'd just like to say greetings to all Africans here at home in the Federation of St Kitts and Nevis, Lion and Orly, and those in the diaspora, whether it's here in the Western world or on the continent. I'd just like to say that being a member of the provisional government of the Republic of Africa, when we come to these microphones, we're talking about the 200 million of us in the Western world in particular, and those further afield on the continent, we're talking about the unification of all Africans. But particular focus is the Africans, them here in the Western world, the 200 million of us. Now, as we know, this year, the 28th of January will be the 86th anniversary of the Buckley's uprising, or the Buckley's Revolution. This is also the 217th anniversary of the Haitian Revolution. Very, 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 we have to pay acknowledgement, especially to what took place in Haiti 217 years ago, when the Haitian people liberated themselves from enslavement, colonialism, neocolonialism, and from ever since that time, they have been paying the price, for the liberation, not only of the Haitian people in particular, but African people in general. As we see that imperialism invaded Haiti in 1915, and ever since that time, Haiti has been under the oppression of imperialism. But like we said, the struggle continues. This is also the 92nd anniversary of the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King. That brother who championed the great cause of justice, not only in the United States, but for African people everywhere.
He was actually born on the 15th.
Yeah, I know, but they celebrate it today. You know what I'm saying? So we just want to give a shout out to those things to let our people know, what is basically happening. And we see what is taking place in the United States in terms of white supremacy, entrenching itself, moving on to fascism, because what is really happening in the United States is that the fascists have gone wild, and we see it, in full effect on the TV. So we can't say that, we didn't see what we see, because if those were black people storming the Capitol, you will see bodies all over the place. We know that. So we want to focus on that today, basically, and to show our people that what is really taking place is white supremacy. It has nothing to do with democracy. You understand? And our people have to get that in there, because what happens is that the people who oppress us, they throw all kind of distractions out there to make us feel like, it's something inherent in us. That's why we are not progressing as a people. And what we are saying, that is white supremacy. Mr. Du Bois, that great Pan-Africanist, and a member of the NAACP, and a struggle for justice for African people, said that the 21st century, will be the century of the color line, meaning that Racism is alive and well, and we have to be aware of what is taking place. And we see this playing full effect a couple Wednesdays ago, I think it was January the 6th, right there when the white supremacists stormed the U.S. Capitol. So it's not an illusion anymore for us. We have to take care.
We address, but we also have to look at the way the whites are mixing with black in marriage. Because, if you go back to the biblical part of it, the Bible did say, don't let your sons mix with them, don't let your daughters mix with them. And this rise that is on right now is just a continuation of their genes. Because, like I said, they have an expiry date. They know it, and that's why they're doing everything. And this COVID pandemic is just the beginning of things to come. There are more serious things going to happen. So I'm going to call back and get my thoughts, because I have notes that I want to bring across to Kalonji, so I'm just going to get my notes and get back. So I just want to shout that for now, okay?
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for your contribution. Any comment on what he said?
Well, basically, his position, my position is that people marry who they want, that they make their own choices, when it comes to that. But what I'm saying is that our people in particular, black people, because the pandemic is definitely aimed at us and poor people in general. Because the elite, the ruling class in the United States, realize that this point that we are at right now, where Trump could have been elected after the presidency of Brother Barack Obama, right? They show you that this thing happened before when you had Reconstruction in the United States, right after slavery. Black people control the whole southern United States in terms of the legislature, from the governor all down in different states. And, the Ku Klux Klan, just reign terror throughout the whole South to really turn back the progress of black people.
Disenfranchised.
You understand what I'm saying? So these things are not new in terms of the history and the development of our people in the Western world and in the United States in particular. Now we see the same thing happening again. But what is actually taking place is that the economic ailment of the United States, where you see now the United States system, which is capitalism, automatically collapsed in February last year. That's why we have the pandemic now. Because they're using the pandemic as a cover, you understand, to shield the real problems that is affecting the United States economy. So, through the system implode in the sense of capitalism decline in the world, the pandemic was staged upon us.
Well,
no,
isn't it, if you say that this was designed to cover the economic collapse in the U.S., this is a global issue.
It is a global issue, but what I'm saying, what we got to understand is that they will do that, you understand, as a cover to make you feel, because remember, the outbreak started in Wuhan, China.
So
but remember the trade war with China and the United States. And I know for sure that the virus was released in Wuhan. I know that, I have the evidence. You understand? And they do these things all the time and then say it's you. Let's take this.
Who's it they?
Imperialism. The United States,
okay.
The United States in particular.
They were part of the releasing of the virus in Wuhan. That's
exactly, at the military games. You understand? I have all the documentation. Not only that, Robert Redfield, who is the head of the CDC, said in front of Congress last January that people who was dying from the so-called flu in the United States back then also tested positive for coronavirus.
You're talking about prior to November? We have a call on the line?
No, last January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's entertain this caller. Caller, your 11 voices.
Hey, good morning, the King.
Good morning, Africa. How about thou?
I am giving thanks. And yourself?
Count my blessings.
And good morning to your guest today, Ras Kalonji.
Yeah, blessed Lord.
Yes. I did not hear your opening. Tuned in a little late, just before the previous caller called in. But I caught the gist, and I just want to start by a request by Mrs. Sylvian Henry, our Queen Mother. And I want to thank her for some corrections that she made in terms of something that I said on another program. But yes, she on your program last, the King.
Yes, go ahead.
Henry alluded to if one ought to repatriate, or the great exodus has started, and one would say former president or the president or the outgoing president of the United States. Actually, Joe Former point, when he specifically said, I did not hear him, but I heard it with Dr. Ericana Chirambori Crow, who said that what the president said to the blacks in the United States wasn't that much of an insult, was reality, because what he said that he don't know why black folks are poor, because his friends go to Africa and get wealthy, not rich, wealthy.
Yeah, I got that.
And so he don't know why black folks are poor. The irony is that we were told not to have anything to do with our motherland and our birthright. And so fast forward 2019, brothers and sisters in the United States of the diaspora went to the continent in droves, and it was called the year of return. As a result of that, there is a planned city called Wakanda. It's to be built on, I think, is somewhere close to Elmina Castle in that area of Ghana. And not only that, there are plans for one in Tanzania, requested by the Prime Minister or the President of that country, and one planned for Morocco. It all started with Zimbabwe and I think it's Zambia who wanted to start the first one, but albeit there are plans afoot for the one in Ghana first. We all know that Akon has started and wanted to initiate other things. Besides mining in the DRC, Akon wanted going to build a city in Senegal. So the move has begun. We are on the up and they are on the down. One thing I wanted to plug into is that the launch on the 1st, not the 6th, not the 6th of January, on the 1st of January, the launch of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where step by step, they're going to roll out plans like the way trading has been done, some bureaucracy of trading across. I'd like to use this metaphor. Can you imagine that Benin and Nigeria are borders, but I have tomatoes and you have carrots or lettuce just across the border. I cannot go to the borderline and we do barter or we do trading. Likewise with everything else. A phone call has to go to, be it whatever, the Francophone or the Anglophone, the Saxophone countries. They have to go all the way to France or London for them to intercept my conversation with you. If I'm in from a French colony or from a British colony. All those things is a part of what Kalonji always drove home the point. The Berlin Conference, 1884 to 1885. But Kalonji, something the previous caller said that I want to take sick bone with you, because if we grew up in Christianity and we read the Bible, be it the Old Testament or the New Testament, it does not matter. And if by scriptures you were told not to marry into that, it's not me said, not the previous caller said it. It was something, a guideline that was laid down. Obviously, it had to be something wise. We were told not to, or to just be with your own thing. Okay? If you want to say I am racist or the previous caller is racist, well, the book that was inspired and we so love said it. So, therefore, we are being guided by a racist content. Okay?
Okay.
Now, an individual have a choice to do so. But we were instructed.
Sure, to drive my point. I'm going to pause for our station break shortly.
The consequences, be that as it may, the consequences would be what they are. Okay? So
yes.
I'm going to continue to listen and I shall call back later because I have a thought process also. And the King, I've been sending you some real deep things. So,
Quite so, yes, sir.
You know, yes. Take your time. You know, we got to get this thing correct, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
So I'll continue to listen.
Beautiful. Thanks for your contribution. We're going to pause at this point in time for acknowledgement of our sponsors.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
Smiles have been growing fast because Flow Home internet speeds got faster with up to over 2.5 times their original speeds. Everyone will enjoy a more satisfying experience online doing what they love. All thanks to the best network being better than ever as Flow remains committed to delivering the best connection possible. Join the Flow family and get internet the way it's meant to be. Fast, reliable, and affordable. Sign up today at your nearest Flow store. Conditions apply.
Are you wondering what to do this holiday season? Will it be the same? Will you be able to give your family all that they need? Well, with TDC Financial Services, all your holiday woes will disappear. You can get up to $35,000 unsecured for your holiday needs. Give us a call at 465-6516 or 469-5430 to find out how we can help to make your holidays happier for you and your family. TDC Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Smiles have been growing fast because Flow Home internet speeds got faster with up to over 2.5 times their original speeds. Everyone will enjoy a more satisfying experience online doing what they love. All thanks to the best network being better than ever as Flow remains committed to delivering the best connection possible. Join the Flow family and get internet the way it's meant to be. Fast, reliable, and affordable. Sign up today at your nearest Flow store. Conditions apply.
I want to say welcome back to the program. Good morning once again to our listeners and viewers on the various platforms. We got some folks who are normal, regular listeners like Brenda up in Charlotte. We've got Amber Lois Hodge down there in Anguilla, Chris Collins in Sheffield, DJ Morris in New York, of course, Avril, Dr. Sweeney, etc. We've got in studios with us today Ras Kalonji, and he's got a clip queued up to play as part of his discourse this morning. So let's give a listen to that particular clip. What's the name of the clip, sir?
DC Rage. You're talking about what happened in the capital.
DC Rage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Washington, D.C.
Okay.
But from an economic standpoint.
Okay.
This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another Wolff response. The events in Washington, D.C. of January 6, 2021 have shocked many around the world. But they probably should not have. They were not a surprise. They did not come out of nowhere. They should not have been such a surprise at all. Why? They are part of a process unfolding in the United States that perhaps many folks did not want to see, but that have been in plain view anyway. Let me explain. At least since the 1970s, the American working classes, the people who are employees for a living, working in offices, stores, and factories, the vast majority of our people have been under heavy pressure from an economic system that was no longer friendly to them, as it had been in the aftermath of the Great Depression and World War II. In the 1970s, there began to be a growing split between the benefits of our capitalist system for the top 5% of our people and the costs of that system, which were being loaded onto the other 95%. Wages stagnated. People were unable to capture that middle-class American dream that had been held out as somehow an entitlement of the American working class. It slipped further and further away as people could not keep up with wages that didn't rise anymore, even when the women went out to work, even when the children did something on the weekend, even when the older people became greeters at Walmart. So difficult was it that a whole new level of debt had to be taken up, excuse me, by the American working class. Debt to buy your car, debt to buy your home, debt with your credit card to buy even a minor item at a local store, and finally the credit now necessary to go to college. To the underpayment at work, to the overworkedness at the job, you now added the anxieties of debt. It was harder and harder to hold your family together. It was harder and harder to hold any of your relationships together. Families dissolved. Marriages dissolved. The American working class was exhausted, and it turned inward. And for the last 30 years, it was like a sleeping giant. But it has now woken up. Why? Because while it was sleeping, the conditions that put it to sleep only got worse. Inequality widened in the United States. The difficulties, the precariousness of work got worse. The gap between the political leaders and the mass of people widened. I could go on, but you all know the story. And finally, if you keep prodding a sleeping giant, he wakes up. She wakes up. And that's what happened. The last 10 years have been an angry, irritated, working class giant rearing his and her head up. It started in 2011 with the Occupy Wall Street movement. Suddenly, overnight it seemed, in 300 cities, people set up tents in the downtown to protest the gap between the 1% and everybody else. A gap which got worse over the last 10 years because nobody responded at the level of leadership to what the Occupy movement made so clear. Then in 2016, we began to see what an angry, exhausted, waking giant could do. In England, very similar to here, that angry giant decided that the problem wasn't the capitalist system they lived in, the wages they weren't being paid, the overwork being demanded of them, the disintegrating society. No, they decided the problem was Europe. And so they voted for Brexit. They voted to get rid of Europe, to leave Europe. That made no sense at all. In the last 5 years of Brexit, England has continued to become more unequal, more economically depressed, a disaster. And also in 2016, the United States angry working people, the waking giant, voted for Trump. He sounded different, he looked different, he made grandiose promises. He didn't seem like the conventional half-asleep politicians who had run the society into the ground. But he turned out to be like the English. He promised everything and told us that our problems were poor immigrants from Latin America and the Chinese. That's as crazy as the British thinking their problem was Europe. So we beat up on the immigrants and we attacked the Chinese with tariffs and trade wars. Did it improve the economic conditions of the last 4 years? Not a bit. they deteriorated. And then we saw with horror how bad it was when this rich country did worse in fighting the pandemic than almost any other country on earth, including many with far fewer resources. This is an economic system spinning out of control. And what was seen in the Capitol building of Washington on January 6th was just another manifestation of angry working class people. But you know, when you're angry and you've woken up after being asleep and not paying too much attention to the problems accumulating around you, you're an easy mark for right-wing politicians who can say what you want to hear and get you to support them. And those folks can also be won over to the wildest theories. That's why some of those at the Capitol wanted to elect the president who just lost an election, while others who were there believe that an international ring of pedophiles is the cause of the pandemic. Are people a little bit crazy? Yes, they've been under too much pressure. Decades of being overworked and underpaid and over-indebted and underappreciated take their toll. And by the way, they will continue to do so unless basic changes happen in this country. Changes far beyond anything that the establishment of the Democratic Party, and especially Joe Biden, have ever endorsed, discussed, or initiated. We need to do something about the inequality of this society. Even during the pandemic, we allowed the richest amongst us to become much richer while 25 million people sit.
Okay, who's the author of that?
Professor Richard Wolff, economist.
Okay, he's an economist.
Yes.
And is he affiliated with which university?
Excuse me?
Is he affiliated with any of the universities?
Yeah, he teach at the New School in New York City.
So he's given an overview. He's trying to rationalize the six of
Yeah, he giving you a basic outline of what is taking place in the United States from an economic standpoint.
How they came from there to what happened. I think that's a combination of all the
economic ailments that is affecting the United States for decades.
Okay, we're gonna go straight to the line to this caller. Caller 11 Voices, welcome to the program.
Yes, the King, it's me again. Okay. Just to backtrack on what Africa said. I want to thank him for, bringing it fast a little more lighter. My thing is the area that is happening now. When I mention about the marriage part of what is happening in America, with black and white.
Yes.
It's about eugenics. They're mixing our DNA now through marriage, and it's called eugenics. That is a very big thing happening right now with the race. Sometimes people will say, well, you have to bring race in it. Well, race is the major factor in all that is happening. Because, if you look around, do your own analysis, and when you observe what is happening, every other race are being respected. From the Chinese even to the Indians, and it's happening on a global scale. But our race, you and me, our race are not being respected. And until we get together and combine our resources, something Ras Kalonji said about Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba was assassinated, all because his speech, and they felt that he disrespected the king. Even though it was, let's say, his own people who pulled the trigger, or whoever. The truth is coming out now because people, before they're on their dying bed, they're confessing. This white man said that he poured acid on the way he started up Patrice Lumumba's body. We need to do a a general overhaul of our school curriculum. If our history was taught in our schools, we would see things differently. Because look at it, the schools today, the youth today are not aware of what happened with our people in the Congo. So, you know, the education system here and in the Caribbean on a global level need to change. They gave us what they want because they didn't want us to know what they did. So our education system needs changing on a serious level. Because you ask a kid today anything about African history, how many of them would know what they did to Patrice Lumumba?
Let me ask a
King
question.
Leopold did to our people in the Congo? We don't know. If we knew, if that was taught to us, we would see things differently. I gave an example sometime, and I don't want to take up too much time. I was at the bank in Birdwalk one morning. I went to the ATM machine, and the ATM machine took my card. And I had to go on into the bank, and I went not where you go to the tellers, but to the lady. And I explained to her. And a white lady came in who works at the bank. And the lady who was dealing with me, the white woman came in and she went straight face to her desk. The lady who dealing with me, she looked up and greeted that white woman who came in and said good morning to her. And you know, that thing just walked through me. I said to her, Miss, what are you doing? You know, and just to make a long story short, I said, you know, the common thing is for she to greet you. She come in, meet you here. So she's a good. She looked up and watched her and said good morning to her. And then, you know what she said to me? Oh, mister, you're right, you know. I said, come on, man, what are you doing? She passed in straight face, she ain't see you. Don't see her either. Don't see her. But that's the way we are. And you see, all of it has to do with our education system. It needs changing. We need to stop looking up to these people.
Quick
Thank you for
question.
listening.
Who would you make that pitch to change? Okay. Let's hold that question. We're going to take a station break at 1:45, so please respond to, well, comment on the tape that you played. You got about 5 minutes. before we take a station break.
Well, basically, the tape is outlining the economic devastation that is taking place in the United States. Because, like I said before, capitalism imploded last February. That's why the pandemic was pushed upon us as a cover. So what he's saying basically is outlining that the capitalist system, because the imperialism is just an extension of capitalism on a global scale. The United States is the leading country in the world. And what we're saying is that, and what Professor Wolf is saying is that the economic ailments of the working people within the United States is so bad at this particular time. That's why the economy imploded on itself. And not only that, we have to tie these things into the whole region in terms of the Western world, because the United States is the economic juggernaut in the world. And they see China as their rival. That's why Trump put tariffs on China to stagnate their development. But what you have to understand is that the United States economic difficulties is so disastrous that they can't stop the rise of China. And that's why I'm saying, that's why the pandemic was pushed upon us. Not only to eliminate the world population to a certain degree, right? But it was, in my view, it was mainly focused on black people in particular and poor people in general. It doesn't matter what ethnic group or race you come from.
So how would that benefit the U.S. economic system?
It will benefit it in the sense that you have to rebuild now. Okay, for instance, take here in the Caribbean. Look at our economies. All of our islands are
interlinked.
Yes, all our countries in the Caribbean, in CARICOM, they have to go to the IMF to borrow money. But that was deliberately done to mash up our economies, because if you borrow money from the IMF, you have to repay them. So what is happening is that they see now that in a situation like this, that our countries now going to be helping them in the sense of paying back the loans to these bigger countries, because we don't control the IMF. You see, and all these things is linked. But our people have to be aware that the economic situation that we are that we're dealing with right now, where capitalism is really on its dying bed. And the only thing left with is the burial. And when we come back later on, probably on the other side, I want to play another clip where Dr. Martin Luther King letter from a Birmingham prison, where he explained the basic class content of the black community within the United States and how these particular people, you understand, want to hold up an economic system that is in decline. Not only that, but what we are seeing now manifesting in the United States is that white supremacy is a threat to all black people, regardless of your status in society.
But that was established years and years ago. There
Yeah.
have always been a threat. So I'm trying to get your thread. I'm trying to piece it together. White supremacy is a threat to black people. I think most people would agree that all the fringe movement, all these plenty groups of has been emboldened by the ascendancy of Trump, etc., etc. And what we've seen is a manifestation of them coming forward because he actually gave him a license. In so many words, he gave him dog whistles. But that has always been there.
Yeah, but what happened is that our people didn't understand. For instance, the transfer of power. Oh, them things only happen in third world countries. Those are banana republics. No, what I'm saying, nobody have called Trump a dictator yet. You know? If a leader in Africa did what Trump did, he'd be a dictator, authoritarian.
Look at Venezuela.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make, Brother Socrates, is that the problems that are affecting our people is the culture that we have inherited from 600 years of slavery and colonialism. So what we are saying is that when these things happen amongst our people, because we have an alien culture, a culture of oppression, and as Brother Steve Biko said years ago, the most potent weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So what we are doing now, all what is taking place, we are saying to our people, it's time to wake up. You see what is happening with white supremacy? It has nothing to do with democracy.
For the gentleman, our last caller, he spoke about changing the education system, but that curriculum has been designed and put in place for a particular outcome. He spoke about the lady in the bank, the teller who actually, when the other person came in, she went to her and she said, "Good morning." That is brainwashing and goes back over 400 years, but it's being reinforced by the curriculum that we applaud every day. We're going to pause now for our station break and give kudos to our sponsors, and we'll come back and we'll go into the Martin Luther tape that you made reference to.
Found the sound 98.9 WINN FM.
Honey, I have so much to do, and now I need to go to TDC Home and Building Depot to buy the new fridge.
Samantha, stop worrying. You can purchase the fridge and whatever else you may need with TDC Home and Building Depot's curbside and delivery service.
Really?
Just send your request via WhatsApp or email, pay online, and get your purchase by pickup or delivery.
Wow! I'm going to try TDC curbside and delivery service now.
Terms and conditions apply. Check our social media pages for all the details.
Smiles have been growing fast because Flow Home internet speeds got faster with up to over 2.5 times their original speeds. Everyone will enjoy a more satisfying experience online doing what they love. All thanks to the best network being better than ever as Flow remains committed to delivering the best connection possible. Join the Flow family and get internet the way it's meant to be. Fast, reliable, and affordable. Sign up today at your nearest Flow store. Conditions apply.
Gift for Dad's birthday? Click. Ooh, Janice's retirement party? Click. Outfit for my girl's wedding? Click.
With TDC Airbox, you click, we ship. Register for your free U.S. mailbox today and shop all your favorite stores online. Enjoy the convenience. Free consolidation up to 10 pounds. Competitive rates. Free package tracking account with live notifications. Free delivery and, of course, excellent customer service. Visit our website at tdcairbox.com and register today. For more information, visit our offices at the C.A. Paul Industrial Site in St. Kitts and Penny's Industrial Site in Nevis. Follow us on social media at TDC Airbox. TDC Airbox. You click, we ship. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Voices to our many viewers and listeners. As we continue the program, we're going to queue up. Well, today's is the call on the line. Let's take the call.
Okay.
The King.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm listening, and I listened to the comments from the professor about the economic situation. While I agree that the economic situation has reached its climax and it's imploring, I disagree and I beg to differ on the move. Now, there might be persons who probably jump on the bandwagon of that same economic, quagmire to Washington, to the White House. But just like the COVID pandemic, the move on the White House was planned. Because I was told of the cancellation of Trump's Twitter account and all of the other social medias that he would have disseminated information. Obviously, the way you and I conversation would have been censored and pulled down, he did not. But he got subliminal messages out to his henchmen, the core of it. And those were the ones who led the clarion call. Look, listen, I might agree that others would have jumped on the bandwagon, but that's how things transpired at times. But the core of who went was a mob, because Kalonji would agree that it's not just economic people who just feeling the hardship, because that was a terrorist attack. We would agree that it was a terrorist attack on the White House, but it was orchestrated by an insider, so to speak. Okay, that's just my take on that, because, for instance, because the crux of the matter, is like the inconsistencies with the votes and the tallying and the numbers, overwhelming numbers. Where in the history of the United States you might have found, we know the Deep South. I can call probably two states, Alabama and Georgia. But let's deal with Georgia. Where in the history of the United States that a state like Georgia would have turned like that? And so the core of it was not so much the match. Yes, I would agree that the economic situation has reached its climax. But the core, the match, it was a mob from deep within that really went there to consolidate the person who is there and does not want to relinquish for whatever reason. For the main reason that a state like Georgia slipped like that, probably for the first time. We would have known in runoff in elections, like council elections and so on. We've seen the trend already. But when it comes to a presidential election outcome, Georgia did not. And you would have thought that certain states would not.
Vote traditionally.
That was the reality. So I beg to differ when it comes to that aspect of it. I'm going to continue to listen. I have a different contribution. Especially I want to consolidate what Mrs. Henry said, requested, and we're going to start from one particular country in Africa, not even on the west coast, but in the belly of Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Why? Because economics is the foundation. And if you're going to deal with a country that the United States agreed to their geologists that this country, with all of the untapped resources, has a worth of $14 trillion. It speaks volume. Do you know that the Israeli Mossad are there? Do you know that the
I would
MI5
expect
and
all
the
the
MI6 and the CIA, they are there? And that is one of the countries considered to be the poorest country on the continent, which is the richest country in the world. That's just food for thought. I'll continue to listen.
All right, thank you, Africa. As I was saying, today has been observed globally as, Martin Luther King's birthday. It's actually on the 15th, but of course we honor the work of Dr. King, and you have a tape queued up to play, which will take us up to news time.
Yeah, go ahead, my brother.
And it's the
letter from a Birmingham prison.
Okay, go ahead.
It's very important. This,
Clergyman, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticisms that cross my desk, my secretaries would have little time for anything other than such correspondence in the course of the day, and I would have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I want to try to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I think I should indicate why I am here in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the view which argues against outsiders coming in. I have the honor of serving as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have some 85 affiliated organizations across the South, and one of them is the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Frequently, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, the affiliate here in Birmingham asked us to be on call to engage in a nonviolent direct action program if such were deemed necessary. We readily consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promise. So I, along with several members of my staff, am here because I was invited here. I am here because I have organizational ties here. But more basically, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the prophets of the 8th century BC left their villages and carried their "Thus saith the Lord" far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to the far corners of the Greco-Roman world, so am I compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my own hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with a superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham, but it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the Negro community with no alternative. In any nonviolent campaign, there are 4 basic steps: collection of the facts to determine whether injustices exist, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. We have gone through all these steps in Birmingham. There can be no gainsaying the fact that racial injustice engulfs this community. Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of brutality is widely known. Negroes have experienced grossly unjust treatment in the court.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to pause and return to that recording after the midday news. We have to pause for that. That's coming up in about 40 seconds. But if you may give an overview on the speech, you won't play.
Well, as you hear Dr. King say, you know what I mean, is that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, basically. So, you know, what he's saying basically, as our people, we have to struggle and support each other. That's what he's basically saying in a nutshell.
Okay. We are going to have to return to more of that after we pause for the midday newscast, which comes up in about 10 seconds. So thank you for listening. Thanks for your calls for the first half of Voices. We'll be back after the midday newscast. See you on the other side.
98.9 is WINN FM.
We now bring you the WINN FM Headline News. The WINN FM Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs. And make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
That was the WINN FM headline news, brought to you by Ken.
With the WINN headline news, I am Kevon Brown. Today, Monday, January 18th, for the 35th time, we celebrate and commemorate the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister who advocated the use of nonviolent means to end racial segregation. The 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, signed a bill marking the third Monday of January as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 1983, and the first time the holiday was observed was in January 1986. We may know him best because of his I Have a Dream speech given on August 28, 1963, but King first gained notoriety during a bus boycott by African Americans in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
For many, King was one of the more influential African-American civil rights leaders, especially during the 1960s, as he was instrumental in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination in public accommodation, facilities, and employment, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1964. King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. However, we may have lost him a lot sooner if he had sneezed. In a New York Times article, the 4 words, not as known as I Have a Dream, but just as significant, retroactively speaking, if I had sneezed, were highlighted. On September 20th, 1958, Dr. King was at a store on West 125th Street in Harlem, where he was signing copies of his first book, Stride Towards Freedom, The Montgomery Story, when in walks a woman reportedly dressed to the nines and presumably there for the signing, but was packing a letter opener and a loaded .25 caliber pistol. The woman, Izola Ware Curry, stabbed Dr. King in the chest. He was taken to the hospital with the letter opener still embedded in his chest. This is an excerpt from the great mountaintop speech that Martin Luther King gave on April 3rd, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, where he addressed the sneeze and which was his last speech.
And while sitting there autographing books, a demented black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing, and I said, "Yes." The next minute I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I'd received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962. The Negroes in Albany, Georgia, decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. Black people of Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
In his address at the opening of the new law year on behalf of St Kitts and Nevis and a representative of the Inner Bar, Mr. Charles Wilkin, Queen's Counsel, compliments the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court for its response to the challenges posed by COVID-19. He recommends one of the adjustments made to facilitate the functioning of the court during the pandemic be made a permanent feature.
The Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court has been proactive in managing its system during the pandemic and has been able, through effective organization and the use of technology, to provide continued access to justice. No doubt the court will look at the legal and other ramifications of making permanent the conduct of virtual hearings and trials. That process has been very effective during the pandemic and saved enormously in expenses. Once the correct balance can be struck and the access by litigants and witnesses to technology can be ensured in each case, there is every reason why this should become part of the new norm for civil cases and, where appropriate, criminal trials as well.
Mr. Wilkins said technology is a double-edged sword as demonstrated during the lockdowns.
As the downtime has allowed idle and devious minds to expand its use for disinformation, intolerance, racism, bigotry, abuse, and threats. We have with great dismay watched these growing practices infiltrate public discourse and political debate and sabotage national efforts to address the pandemic in our biggest neighbors to the north and the south. We have seen the resulting threats posed to the rule of law and democracy there. We should not assume that the abuses of technology with the results seen in our big neighbors cannot have the same effect here. Negative attitudes and behavior can be extremely contagious, especially when so easily promulgated.
He recalled instances of abuse directed at judicial officers.
We have in recent times seen instances of the abuse of social media under the anonymity allowed by the technology to insult, threaten, and attack judges. There have been attacks and threats in social media against a judge in St Kitts and Nevis, to which our Bar Association reacted promptly and strongly. We are aware of the recent verbal attack by a political leader in Dominica on the resident judge, which was an outrageous disgrace. And we have read of more than 800 former judges and senior legal figures in the UK writing to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary there, accusing them of endangering the personal safety of lawyers through their abusive attacks on the profession.
The Queen's Counsel, who is in his 50th year of practice, is also a former president of the local bar association. The impact of COVID-19 on the local economy has resulted in the government paying out more than $11 million in severance claims. That's according to Minister Wendy Phipps, who gave a breakdown of claims and payments at the recent press conference hosted by the Prime Minister.
Total number of claims that would have been submitted between the gap of the 21st of December right down till just before Christmas would have been 65. We would have had a number of smaller claims trickling in on a staggered basis, not more than about 36. The total amount that would have been paid out by year end would have been just over 1,426 claims, and that would be the total process to date, and the total that would have been paid out by year end would have been 1,340. And those that would have been awaiting payment by year end would have been an additional 86. Now, let me just clarify something here. When I indicate that claims that were awaiting payment would be about 86, those would be claims that for whom all of the processing would have been done with data being verified by Social Security, especially in terms of calculating years that would be eligible from which you calculate severance or calculate, in other instances, 1 or 2 long service gratuity and so forth. For both of those instances, for you to get a maximum payout, you would have had to have 17 years of uninterrupted service, relative to long service or relative to severance. In terms of what would have been paid out throughout 2020, in terms of processing claims, the government would have paid out $11,864,623.95.
Minister Phipps did not give a comparative analysis of the numbers for both St Kitts and Nevis, but reported that most severance claims from Nevis were honored.
Most of the claims that we are seeing from Nevis would have been coming from, as we expect, the hotel and restaurant sector. So a number of the claims would have started being eligible for payment from Four Seasons as early as perhaps maybe August. Also from Nisbet's Plantation, Montpelier, and so forth, Golden Rock Hotel, and a number of smaller hotels. There are still some claims for whom data would have to be verified that we are awaiting. In a number of cases, the government would have made attempts to pay out claims before the normal expected processing time, especially in those instances where there would have been accompanying medical emergencies for the persons who are eligible to receive severance. So we have endeavored on both sides of the channel to ensure that when those special circumstances arise, that we will try our best to expedite the claims.
In more news, this report from ABS in Antigua and Barbuda.
Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, is cautioning the current cluster of COVID-19 cases is the worst the country has seen.
The situation now with 27 cases is far more precarious than when we had the 39 cases. It is the highest level of COVID risk that we have seen so far, which requires heightened vigilance by all Antiguans and Barbudans.
Now encourages everyone to continue practicing physical distancing, hand washing, and the wearing of masks.
To assume that every single person who comes within the circumference of your personal space, let's say that 6 feet space circumference, that they could be a carrier of COVID, and that you ought to ensure that they're wearing the necessary mask and that they do not violate the personal space.
Now this, Prime Minister Brown says Antigua and Barbuda can store thousands of doses of Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines. These vaccines must be kept at usually cold temperatures of about -70 degrees Celsius.
We have the capacity to store at least 30,000 Pfizer vaccines here. We do have refrigeration that can provide that level of storage on island.
It is still unclear which vaccine will be acquired for Antigua and Barbuda, but the Prime Minister is encouraging everyone to take the vaccine once one becomes available. He says COVID-19 could linger among humans for decades, so there must be mass inoculation. Prime Minister Brown says he is confident the Pfizer vaccine, taken by over 30,000 volunteers before FDA approval, is safe. He says there will be a public education campaign, and he will be the first to take the vaccine to prove it's safe.
Reports on security measures for the inauguration of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden and other news from the USA.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. Secret Service is taking the lead on inauguration security ahead of Joe Biden's swearing in on Wednesday. They'll be supported by National Guard troops. There are allegations that police officers, veterans, and even active troops participated in the January 6th riot at the Capitol. The Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, says military officials are checking the National Guard troops to see if they pose any potential security threat.
Been vetting them through the FBI, getting support from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to continue the vetting of every man and woman that come here.
As many as 25,000 National Guard troops may be deployed in Washington, D.C. President-elect Joe Biden is going to nominate leaders for the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He is tapping former financial regulator Gary Gensler to lead the SEC and Federal Trade Commission member Rohit Chopra to head the Consumer Protection Agency. Chopra is also a former deputy at that agency. More than 12 million COVID-19 vaccines have been given to people, and 31 million doses have been passed out to health officials. NPR's Alison Aubrey reports new vaccination sites will open around the country.
The pace of vaccinations is picking up as more sites ramp up, including stadiums and pharmacies. President-elect Biden's plan is also calling for the use of mobile clinics and federally qualified health centers. Joshua Sharfstein of Johns Hopkins University says the strategy may help efforts to vaccinate people in hard-to-reach communities. And Sharfstein says more vaccine supply will be needed.
It will be fantastic if there are additional vaccines that are found to be safe and effective.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, in an interview on NBC, said 2 additional vaccines, the 1 dose from Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine, will likely be evaluated by the FDA in the next couple of weeks. Alison Aubrey, NPR News.
Most ceremonies in Atlanta, Georgia, commemorating the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday are virtual this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. From member station WABE, Emil Moffat reports one church service today will feature remarks from one of Georgia's newly elected U.S. senators.
The traditional parade celebrating the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday will not be held because of COVID-19. The week-long celebration of King's legacy has been taking place virtually and will culminate with a church service this morning. King's daughter, Bernice King, and the Reverend T.D. Jakes are among those expected to speak in the online service, along with Georgia's Senator-elect Raphael Warnock. Warnock is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, the same place where both King and his father preached. A wreath-laying ceremony at King's tomb will take place immediately after the virtual service. For NPR News, I'm Emil Moffat in Atlanta.
You're listening to NPR News.
You are listening to the Headline News, this special report from Al Jazeera and the coronavirus variants.
Let's talk about the mutations. The virus that causes COVID-19 keeps changing. There are a bunch of new versions, and they're more contagious.
Countries around the world seem to just be scrambling, trying to keep up and stay ahead of these variants.
One's hit the UK hard and is spreading around the world. There are others in South Africa, Brazil, Nigeria too. But should we be worried?
Some people think, well, if this virus is changing and it's more transmissible, there's nothing we can do. That's just not true.
So how big a problem are these mutations? Will the vaccines still work? And the big question many of us want answered, when will this all end? 2020 gave us the kind of pandemic no one alive today had ever seen before. A year later, 2021 is starting out with the same pandemic, only now it's on steroids. One reason is there are new versions of the virus, but scientists say that's not exactly a surprise. Viruses mutate all the time. It's just what they do. Viruses usually spread within species, animal to animal, person to person, but sometimes they mutate and do things like jump the species barrier, say. That's what happened with swine flu, MERS, and this one, SARS-CoV-2. A virus exists to replicate, evolve, and spread, and it does that by hijacking a cell's reproductive system to make copies of itself, so it can spread to other cells and onto other hosts. And as it gets copied over and over again, sometimes there are mistakes. Think of them as typos. Those changes are called mutations.
Many of these changes have very little to no impact on the virus itself. And in fact, many of these changes are a dead end for the virus.
But every now and then, a mutation comes along that makes the virus better at what it does. The key is opportunity. For example, healthy people have immune systems that fight the virus for maybe a couple of weeks. But people who are already really sick with weak immune systems could play host to the virus for much longer. It gives the virus more time to mutate. That's what they think happened with these new strains.
But there's a hypothesis that they originated from an individual who was immunocompromised, and the virus was replicating inside their body for many weeks, many months. So the virus was changing inside that individual, and then that person transmitted to someone else. And that's why we saw so many mutations all at once.
In the UK, a single variant of the virus known as B117 has 23 mutations. It showed up in September 2020, and according to the World Health Organization, they think it could be about 70% more contagious than the original Wuhan strain.
Researchers at Imperial College London say that even with a lockdown similar to that in England in November, the number of cases would still triple.
Let's look at it this way, using what's called the reproduction number. This coronavirus was known to spread from one person to 2 to 3 other people on average. The R number was between 2.5 and 3.5. That's without things like social distancing and lockdowns to control the spread. With those measures, the R number came down. The virus was infecting maybe just one other person or fewer, which is enough to stall the spread. But then this new UK strain showed up and pushed the R number back up to as high as 1.7. And this strain has traveled. But there are other strains too.
Another new variant of coronavirus has emerged in Nigeria.
South Africa has been hit by a new variant.
As autoridades japonesas informaram que a nova variante do coronavírus foi encontrada em viajantes vindos do Brasil.
It's important to point out, though, that while these new strains might be easier to catch, the WHO says the data coming out of the UK so far suggests no change in disease severity or in the number of people dying. Okay, here's the next question. Will the vaccines still work on those mutated viruses? Well, the WHO says right now the answer is yes.
Because the part of the virus that these vaccines are targeting is relatively stable. So we're for the moment, this looks to be manageable.
Still, it's not impossible that more genetic changes down the line mean we need to tweak the vaccines. It's why scientists around the world have been keeping an eye on how this virus is changing. They've done more than 300,000 gene sequences of the virus since the pandemic began. So there is a strategy to track and deal with mutations, but the WHO says that if anything, the mutations are a wake-up call, and that it's up to us, individuals and governments, to do what we can to stop the virus from spreading and mutating in the first place. Look at what happened at the end of the year. People traveled. They spent time with friends and families, all against health advice.
Bite the bullet and sacrifice that social gathering.
Verzichten Sie auf jede Reise, die nicht wirklich zwingend notwendig ist.
Tis the season to be jolly, but tis also the season to be jolly careful.
The out shopping, the mixing of families will increase transmission regardless of if it's a variant or not.
And what does all of this mean for the end of the pandemic? Well, right now the plan is still to vaccinate as many people as possible, to build immunity as fast as possible, even though vaccines can only do so much.
I think many people thought that vaccines would be rolled out and that we would be able to end this within a couple of months. But we're really looking at this entire year of rollout and into 2022.
Scientists knew the coronavirus was going to evolve from the get-go, but the health advice to sit tight and stay safe, that hasn't changed. And for those of us who want a hard and fast answer on when this will all be over, well, the WHO says anybody who gives you a date, they'd only be guessing.
That was the WINN FM headline news, brought to you by KDP Enterprises, Caribbean Alliance, Carrie Brewery, CNC Trading, The Grange.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
We are faced with tough decisions every day, but choosing the right home or motor insurance shouldn't be one. You need fast claim settlement from a company that's been rooted for over 31 years. And don't forget the A Excellent rating by AM Best. Make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Reliable insurance that you can count on. Get a quote today for your home, motor, contents, and liability insurance needs, and make the intelligent choice. Caribbean Alliance. Tomorrow secured. Local agents, Dalil Walwyn & Co. Limited. Telephone 465-2631 or 469-5303 for the Nevis office.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. WINN FM.
Ready? Okay.
Of Negro homes and churches in Birmingham than in any other city in the nation. These are the hard, brutal facts of the case. On the basis of these conditions, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers, but the latter consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiations. Then last September came the opportunity to talk with leaders of Birmingham's economic community. In the course of the negotiations, certain promises were made by the merchants. For example, to remove the store's humiliating racial signs. On the basis of these promises, the Reverend Fred Shuttleworth and the leaders of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights agreed to a moratorium on all demonstrations. As the weeks and months went by, we realized that we were the victims of a broken promise. A few signs briefly removed returned. The others remained. As in so many past experiences, our hopes had been blasted and a shadow of deep disappointment settled upon us. We had no alternative except to prepare for direct action, whereby we would present our bare bodies as a means of laying our case before the conscience of the local and the national community. Mindful of the difficulties involved, we decided to undertake a process of self-purification. We began a series of workshops on nonviolence, and we repeatedly asked ourselves, are you able to accept blows without retaliating? Are you able to endure the ordeal of jail? We decided to schedule our direct action program for the Easter season, realizing that except for Christmas, this is the main shopping period of the year. Knowing that his strong economic withdrawal program would be the byproduct of direct action, we felt that this would be the best time to bring pressure to bear on the merchants for the needed change. Then it occurred to us that Birmingham's mayoral election was coming up in March, and we speedily decided to postpone action until after the election day, when we discovered that the Commissioner of Public Safety, Eugene Bull Connor, had piled up enough votes to be in the runoff. We decided again to postpone action until the day after the runoff so that the demonstrations could not be used to cloud the issues. Like many others, we waited to see Mr. Connor defeated, and to this end we endured postponement after postponement. Having aided in this community need, we felt that our direct action program could be delayed no longer. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? You're quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. My citing the creation of tension as part of the work of the nonviolent resistor may sound rather shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but that is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. Just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create a tension in the mind so that individuals could rise from the bondage of myths and half-truths to the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal, so must we see the need for nonviolent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. The purpose of our direct action program is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation. I therefore concur with you in your call for negotiation. Too long has our beloved Southland been bogged down in a tragic effort to live in monologue rather than dialogue. My friends, I must say to you that we have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. Lamentably, it is an historical fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up their unjust posture. But as Reinhold Niebuhr has reminded us, groups tend to be more immoral than individuals. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa.
Okay, that was we continued with that speech by Dr. King after the news break. So you're here to weigh in on the speech and
Well, Brother Socrates, what Dr. King was saying is that in order for you to be liberated, you know, whatever means you take, whether it's violent or non-violent, and he was about non-violent, is that you have to take direct action, non-violent direct action, because as he said, that the oppressor never gives up power willingly.
The speech was given when?
The speech name is a letter from a Birmingham prison.
Yeah, that was in what year?
I think was 1963.
Okay. You have any belief that between then and now, our people, in quotation mark, would have gotten the message?
Well, I think now, especially here in the Caribbean, you know, our people is actually seeing what is taking place in the United States because they're seeing it visually. You know, the technology that we have today is that we're seeing things visually. For instance, we see George Floyd live and in living color, right? Years ago, you could have never see that, so they couldn't make the correlation. Now, years ago, Malcolm said that the chicken has come home to roost. We see what is taking place in the United States, where the chickens has come home to roost, because he made that statement when President Kennedy was assassinated, and he was making that statement in relation when the same forces...
He was attacked for saying it.
Yeah. The same forces that killed Kennedy was the same forces that killed Lumumba. So what he was making the correlation now, that the chicken come home to roost. We see where the white supremacists has come home to the capital in the United States. So what we are saying basically is that everything is interrelated.
But I might argue, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, that having seen what happened to George Floyd, being aware of what happened to Malcolm X, being aware of what happened to Dr. King, there's still a disconnect with our people and what happens in the U.S. because some would say, well, what happens there has nothing to do with us.
But they have everything to do with us.
I know that.
You see? So what we are saying now is that in this era, we have to make a direct link because, okay, if you're saying that it has nothing to do with us, but our economy is tied to them.
Right. Beyond the economics.
You see?
Right.
And in every sphere, because most of the things that we use today are imported.
Still to the economics.
Exactly. So everything is linked. And what I'm saying, what happened to George Floyd could also happen to us if we was in the same situation.
Yeah, but many of us feel unless it happened to you directly. You look at it and you make a few comments and then you move on.
Okay.
So there's no consistent, there's no connection in a lot of us' mind with what happened there with us. We deny ourselves being African, so something happened. It's a 9-day wonder, and then we move on.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying, as time go on and people see what is happening, because most people I talk to since the situation in the capital, they're telling you straight up, if them was black people, they will be killed.
We accept that.
You see, so they're waking up, and what we're saying, as time continues, and all what is taking place within the world, our people gonna rise to the occasion.
I see a role as an educator, trying to reach out to our people, right? And your task is in no way an easy one.
We know that.
Because we are so concerned or preoccupied with the everyday economics, the bread and butter issues. We just look at these things and, okay, it happened again. But there isn't a concerted movement. There isn't a conversation, a continuing dialogue. We don't see a connection or correlation with what happened there in the U.S. to what happens here to the average Kittitian. We are now concerned with the survival in this COVID-19 environment. And even though, as I sang a while ago, that throughout the region, we find ourselves in the same boat of terrorism, which we keep trying to refloat. We have issues because most of our economic survival is tied to the U.S. economy, to some extent Europe. And that's not giving any indication that anytime soon it will sort of reverse itself. So we're still waiting, we're waiting to see what has happened. So the issues with the George Floyd, today's Martin Luther King, they're celebrating his birthday, etc. We identified at some point, but it's not at the focal point of our concerns.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying again is that Marcus Garvey said some years ago that when everything else failed to organize the people, conditions will. We see what is happening with the pandemic is that the pandemic could affect any one of us, regardless if you're in the United States or in the Caribbean or in Africa.
It has affected us.
Exactly. So what I'm saying to show you now, that is what's going to force the unification of our people. Because like Dr. King said...
You really believe this?
Yeah. Dr. King once said, is that we came on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. You see what I'm saying? And this pandemic, right? This pandemic, as I said before, is targeting our people in particular, but poor people in general. You see? And that is my position. So what I'm saying is that true Babylon system is in the crisis, as I say, capitalism. Because you see, we got to be upfront and direct in terms of what we're dealing with. The capitalist system is dying. And we only await its burial. So what we are saying is that these things will force our people, I have no doubt, to show our people that our interest is one and the same.
You think capitalism is dying?
I know it is dying.
Okay. What is it going to be replaced with?
The only solution to that is socialism.
There is no unification, you know.
No, what I'm saying, we deal with economics.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Okay, for instance, there was slavery. It's no longer. There was feudalism. Then there's capitalism. So what I'm saying, those systems die. And I have no doubt that capitalism will also die.
Capitalism was an instrumental part of slavery.
Exactly.
You can't all about the economics.
Exactly.
It was all about.
Exactly.
So
you can't divorce the two.
Slavery died, but capitalism, it was all part of slavery.
Exactly, because we were capital.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were commodities.
Exactly.
We were the stock, livestock. The stock market was created, and how many farmers slip only had stock. We were the stock.
But Wall Street was created by auctioning the slaves, where Wall Street is directly. That's where they used to auction the slaves.
The stock market was created on us.
Exactly. Everything in the customs department, everything that you see that is functioning in today's society and institutionally.
Capitalism, how do you break that down? Let's pause to take a call here. Call your 11 voices.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Elder.
I mean, you all are like, don't play with me.
It's a respect.
I didn't carry you.
How you doing?
Henry? In school. Good afternoon, my African brother.
Good afternoon, Sylvie.
The power of Christianity. I am listening, as you see. That's what we need, we need godly leaders.
But Miss Henry, wait, now I just want to make a point. Western Christianity is different from African Christianity.
Martin Luther King Christianity is the kind who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the cause.
That's just liberation theology.
Like our leader Jesus was willing to die. I mean, you can't get around from it, Martin Luther King and other Christians, because sometimes we downplay, and this is where our Christian leadership needs to step up. We need to step up. We are being pushed back and out. So we give the people the impression that they have to do the liberating. If you believe in liberation, which Jesus came to give, then you're empowered. I mean, could you imagine a man just taking blows like that? And I'm sorry you finished. You all stop the thing. I realize it is long, But I admired Martin Luther King Jr. and many of the other ministers who were in the front taking the blows, taking the brutality. But you see, what we lack, we talk a lot, but we lack leadership. This morning somebody spoke about the intermarriage.
Yes.
We bring that on ourselves. We think that nothing waiting on the black males to step up. What is hindering our men from marrying the women that they work on and give children to? So black women don't have aspirations of having homes too, stable homes. We actually push them in that direction. When they get money, who you run to?
Correct. I was going to make a presentation because I don't like to interrupt.
I kept saying to myself, a lot of the things that we blame the other class for, not the race for. We do it to ourselves, We don't organize. We have people who are organizing. They don't have no wife. They don't have no stable homes. They don't promote it. We're supposed to be promoting these things. They must have, we talk about Wall Street. We have black people with money. We must begin to organize ourselves economically. It is our black leaders who bring in the people to compete against us. And I think in your definition, imperialist is not just the USA. Russia is an imperial power.
No, but imperialism is the extension of capital in different markets.
Well, I'm glad you know. So they classify China is a big imperial power. Has been. Japan was. China is.
Yes, but Miss Henry, what you gotta understand, the United States government has never assisted any African nation in terms of its liberation. The Soviet Union did that. China did that.
They did it for their own purposes.
Well, whatever. I mean,
it was imperialism.
But what I'm saying to you.
And wait. You are promoting socialism. Under socialism, there's no private enterprise.
No, that's not true.
Are you willing to give up what you have?
That is not true, Miss Henry. Under capitalism, right? The means of production.
I studied it. Define it.
Is controlled by private enterprise. The means
Define
of production.
Socialism for me.
Excuse me?
You said capitalism is dying. I'm not defending anything. I think your definition them need cleaning up.
They don't need cleaning up. What happens is that...
Example that you are giving, your example of socialism is China and Russia, you know.
No. You see, you jump to a conclusion.
Who are we to look at?
Under socialism, the people that produce the labor should own it. Should own the capital. They must have a say in it.
I taught that thing, you know. I know it inside out. I taught it, you know.
It's good on
Let me
paper.
tell you. We talk about private ownership. You have a planned economy. You know that? The economy has to be planned.
But capitalism economy is planned also.
Planned by private enterprise.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying to you that the people, okay, we were slaves, right? We were a commodity. We didn't own anything.
I understand that.
Well, so what we are saying now is that it's time for we to own what we produce.
So how are we going to get around that?
Through struggle and through self-determination.
And through investment too. Through our people equipping themselves for the market.
We have
as
to
you say, we have purchasing power, you know.
Exactly.
We are not helpless, you know.
You never heard about the Montgomery bus boycott?
I'm glad you know.
So it shows you the power that we have.
Right, so that you proposing socialism is an escape.
It's not an escape because capitalism... What is taking place in the United States is dying capitalism. That's why you see white supremacy come out like it did.
I understand all that, you know, but what you're proposing is more oppressive.
No, it is not more oppressive
yes,
because that's what you're being that is how they lead you to think.
You ever live on would you live in Cuba?
I don't have a problem with that.
I didn't ask you that.
But look, Cuba is an independent country.
You live in Cuba.
I don't have a problem, sure. Look what Cuba has produced. The best doctors.
Anybody slavery produced, you know? There was production in slavery.
But we produce something good out of slavery?
Let me tell you something. When it comes to the mind, the freedom of the mind, you can't have that under socialism.
What, Miss Henry, that's a fallacy. Miss Henry, no. You can't show me that.
I spent 2 weeks in Cuba and I saw it.
Let me ask you a question. Why is it Dr. King was killed? Why is it Malcolm X was killed? Why is it Lumumba was killed?
Why Jesus? Why they killed Jesus?
Why they killed Jesus?
Yes.
Because he was for the poor people.
Thank you.
Good.
Socialism does not necessarily mean it for the poor people. It has good tenets, eh?
You don't see Jesus as a socialist?
But you ain't want him. You all ain't want him.
No, that ain't the point.
Don't try him.
That is not the
blaspheme him.
Miss Henry, that is not the point.
He is the best example, you know. He's the best example.
But that's a different argument. I don't want to get into that. I don't like to get into religion. We're talking objectively.
You've got to get into religion because when you talk socialism, religion is quashed. And that is what you're running from.
No, Miss Henry.
Yes.
No, listen what I'm saying to you. In Latin America, most of the progressive preachers were liberation theologists.
I'm glad you know.
Yes.
What happened?
What do you mean what happened? They killed them.
Who killed them?
Imperialism. The United States government.
Hello, again, imperialism is not the USA alone. You have USA, you got the UK, you got Europe.
When I'm talking about imperialism, I'm talking about the United States extending its tentacles.
Yeah, but you must
dominate other
expand your
people's markets.
discussion because we were territories of Europe.
Exactly.
So you got to include them in your analysis.
Okay, for instance, I'm glad you bring up that. We were controlled by the colonial office in England, also the United States. We were run from Whitehall in England, from the colonial office. And then in 1952, when we get adult suffrage, you understand? They gave us a system that is still afflicting us today, which is the Westminster system.
Hello, we have choices, you know. I said that's why we need black leadership who understand the problem, who will live it. You see, the problem I have with lots of the black people and the imperialism, they themselves are not stepping out in front and demonstrating what they're preaching.
Who you mean? Be specific. Because Malcolm did that, Dr. King did that.
The present stock of black leaders, all who want to go back to Africa, who want to this, who want to that.
But nothing is
wrong. First to marry to a white man. Nothing is wrong. First one in the line.
Nothing is wrong if they want to return to Africa. I'm saying Our countries are Africa also because we are Africans. We live here. This is an African country.
It is a country with the majority of the people of African descent.
But it's an African country.
But
Because
who owns us
Africans
then?
live
If it's
here.
an African country, who owns us?
Who owns us?
When they say Africa, Africa has 54 countries, ain't so?
Quite so, yes.
I mean, we're doing geography. You can teach your children that.
How do you mean? How they get 54 countries? Because of the Berlin Conference?
Mr. Man, presently they're there. The point is they're there. You got to come straight. If you want to influence, you must have clean facts.
We have clean facts?
Watch. We are an independent country, whether you want to
We are
believe it
not
or
an
not.
independent country.
Who owns us?
The United States.
Now, when you say Africa, you say we are African country.
But
So who in Africa owns
this
us?
is an African country, but we are not yet liberated.
So how do you intend to liberate us? By tying us to somebody else?
No, educate our people. Yeah, here
No,
was,
you see, you want to tie us to somebody
I'm
else.
not telling you. I did not say that.
Yes,
You're
you did.
assuming that.
Hello? It's analysis, you know. You speak, we analyze.
Miss Henry, I
I'm
do not have
telling you,
a
listen to me carefully,
paralysis
listen to
of
me.
analysis. Listen what
I
I'm saying to you.
appreciate what you are doing, right?
Let me
Listen to
give
me,
let,
man.
let me give you this.
Keep it, don't cross talk.
Here it is. You ever heard of Mr. Blyden? Edward Wilmot McBlyden.
Of course I do. Hello, I read a lot of studies African thing, you know.
Okay, hear what he
books
said.
also here.
Hear what he said. The communistic order of African life is not the result of accident. It is born of centuries of experience and is the outcome of a philosophical and faultless logic.
You hear about industrialization?
He said that before the Soviet Union was created.
Yes. You see why the Soviet Union forced the people into industrialization? What you are talking about is those old-time classical things. The countries have got to industrialize if they are to develop.
But we know that. That's what we
But
want.
you all don't sound so. You know, in Africa with this and with that. That is why a lot of Africa has been lagging behind because they take too long to industrialize themselves.
They take too long because they're being still colonized.
They have the resources, you know. They have the resources, eh?
Miss Henry, you're missing the point here. Listen what I'm saying to you. In the Congo, the only place you could for the cell phone is coltan. With the people in the Congo doesn't control the coltan.
What's stopping them?
Imperialism.
What happened to the leaders?
What do you mean what happened to the leaders
and
the Kill Lumumba? You forget that?
He's the only one?
No, he ain't the only one.
What happened to the rest?
Well, the rest them collaborating.
Well, maybe you need to go to Africa to talk to them, see?
I'm in Africa already. The St Kitts is Africa.
Just in Africa, you're in St Kitts. No. Anyway, keep up the good work.
But Miss Henry, what I'm saying to you is
Now
that
they hear you,
the
you know.
only way our people could be free is through the unification of all of us. And our
I
economy
agree,
have
but
to
the
be one.
socialism thing you're pushing, it is against Christianity.
No, Miss Henry.
Yes.
No, you can't say that.
It's a fact.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Ask
Who
me.
enslaved our people in the capitalist them?
Hello, I said Christian, you know.
But it's the same Christian them. That's where we get
But,
Christianity
hello. That activity is not Christian.
But how you going to talk? But they were Christians.
They say so.
Well, so what is the
They say so.
But is them in
man
that?
who said, look, the Bible said they got false people. Jesus himself said, many shall come after me, false.
So, but you're gonna
They got
say,
false
but
black
how you gonna make a
preachers
direct?
too.
You're gonna make a
They got
direct
lots of people
statement that
preaching out to
socialism
false.
is against Christianity, but not capitalism. We were Christianized by the capitalists.
What is wrong with that?
Oh, but
I asked you a question. What is wrong with it?
What is wrong with it?
Yes.
What is wrong with it is that Western Christianity is different because Christianity started in Ethiopia, you know, not in the
After
West.
that.
Not in
So
the
what
West.
is wrong with it?
What is wrong with what?
With Christianity.
But no, because Christianity in the West goes along with capitalism, deal with exploitation.
Hello. Under the most venerable Haile Selassie, Ethiopia was a Christian nation.
Exactly, we know that.
And so what you're saying, does it apply? Did it apply to Ethiopia then?
No, but what I'm saying to you, Ethiopia...
You see, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
No, listen what I'm saying. Christianity in Ethiopia is not the Christianity in the West.
They are different God?
Exactly, because we have the Kebra Negus.
I actually that
So
was
we
the
want to
God,
tell me
you
that
know.
way Jesus is God?
We're talking about no white, no Jesus. They ain't got no white Jesus. So
But
don't
that's
come
all we have in our house.
But hello, people intelligent now, you know. We know what race he come from. So don't come with the foolishness about white Jesus.
Going to any established
We're gonna have to
church.
pause for.
There's a white Jesus on the wall.
And they have another one who want to be in your heart. Anyway, all right then.
Why can't be on the wall?
Because that one on the wall is
conversation. Every time we send a call, it creates a wonderful dialogue, and I absolutely love it. We're going to have to pause for a word from our sponsors before we get back to the program.
98.9 WINN FM.
Smiles have been growing fast because Flow Home internet speeds got faster with up to over 2.5 times their original speeds. Everyone will enjoy a more satisfying experience online doing what they love. All thanks to the best network being better than ever as Flow remains committed to delivering the best connection possible. Join the Flow family and get internet the way it's meant to be. Fast, reliable, and affordable. Sign up today at your nearest Flow store. Conditions apply.
Horsford's Value Mart IGA is helping you spend less and save more. How, you ask? Essential Everyday and Equiline. Spend less on our Essential Everyday products and get the best quality, the best taste, and the best value. Spend less for all your family health and beauty needs with the Equiline brand of over-the-counter products. Horsford's Value Mart IGA is helping you spend less. With our Essential Everyday products and Equiline over-the-counter health and beauty care products. Shop smart and spend less at Value Mart, where price matters most.
I listened to voices, and that was a rather interesting exchange with you and Stephen Henry, Miss Henry. You have an next tape that you bought that you want to keep and play, right?
Yeah, Democracy Now.
Democracy. What's the name of it? The full name?
America the Abyss.
America.
The rise of fascism in the United States.
Got about 20 minutes to go, so let's hear this tape and take it from there.
Now, democracynow.org, the quarantine report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by my co-host Juan Gonzalez in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Well, history is being made today in Washington, D.C., as the House is voting to impeach President Trump for a second time. That's 1 week after he encouraged a violent mob to fight like hell and attack the Capitol as members of Congress voted to ratify Joe Biden's Electoral College victory in the 2020 election. The deadly siege so enraged Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell that he's now reportedly privately backing impeachment, along with a growing number of Republicans, including Congressmember Liz Cheney of Wyoming, the third-ranking Republican in the House. On Tuesday, Vice President Pence rejected a call from the House to invoke the 25th Amendment to the Constitution to remove Trump from office. Meanwhile, several Republican lawmakers bypassed metal detectors to enter the House floor that were installed after last week's deadly attack, including the newly elected Colorado Republican QAnon supporter, Congressmember Lauren Boebert, who vowed in a viral video to carry a gun in the Capitol. Far from the commotion, President Trump surrounded himself with supporters during a visit to the border wall in Alamo, Texas. In his first public appearance since the violence at the Capitol, he continued to deny any involvement with or responsibility for the violent insurrection. This comes as the Washington Post reports the FBI explicitly warned of violence and war at the U.S. Capitol in an internal report issued one day before last Wednesday's deadly Capitol invasion. And police officers from Seattle to New York are under investigation for participating in storming the Capitol, along with members of the New York Fire Department and apparently 7 Philadelphia Transit police officers. 2 black officers who defended the Capitol during the attack confirmed to BuzzFeed News that some of the insurgents they came face-to-face with were off-duty cops. Others were reportedly former military service members. On Tuesday, the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a reminder to members of the armed forces that, quote, the rights of freedom of speech and assembly do not give anyone the right to resort to violence, sedition, and insurrection, unquote. The FBI has opened some 170 cases on individuals involved in the assault and says hundreds more will be opened in the coming weeks. Over 70 people have been charged so far. Now the FBI is warning Trump loyalists plan to hold armed protests nationwide ahead of Biden's inauguration next week. Screenshots of archived content appear to show plans for mass armed actions in Washington, D.C. this weekend. For more, we're joined by Timothy Snyder, professor of history at Yale University, fellow at the Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna, where he now joins us from. He is the author of several books, including On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. His new essay in the New York Times Magazine is headlined, The American Abyss, a historian of fascism and political atrocity on Trump, the mob, and what comes next. Professor Snyder, welcome back to Democracy Now! We're glad that you are physically doing well. We'll talk about that later. But let's talk about what happened. From your vantage point in Vienna, Austria, if you can talk about what you watched last week and why you see race at the core of this Trump-inspired insurrection.
Right. I mean, number one, it's kind of you, Amy, to mention the article. The reason why I could publish a big article about this part of the coup attempt right after it happened was that this was completely and utterly predictable. I already had the article drafted before the 6th of January because it was obvious to me what was going to happen. And so I just want to underline the points you were suggesting earlier about just how strange it was that this kind of thing could happen so easily. As to race, I mean, this is a classic historian's point. The point I make in the article is about the big lie. You know, I say that these are the kinds of things that happen if a charismatic leader with a big megaphone with a lot of reach is able to consistently tell one thing which is simply not true, but which deeply matters. Like, for example, I won an election that I lost. That has to lead to violence. But as you rightly suggest, the big lie has to be rooted in a particular society. And in the United States, the big lie is going to be rooted in race. Let's count the ways. Number one, what Mr. Trump is saying when he won the election is that there was fraud. And by fraud, he means the reality that African Americans are allowed to vote. When he speaks of Milwaukee or Atlanta or Detroit, what he's saying is black voters, right? When he's saying I won, he's saying I won if you only count the votes of the real Americans. Number two, think of Senator Cruz and his invocation of 1877. As every historian of the U.S. knows, and as lots of African American knows, but maybe not everybody knows, the Compromise of 1877 is the very moment when the American South was allowed to build up a basically American apartheid. The Compromise of 1877 is what allowed American states to push African Americans away from the voting booths and into a Jim Crow condition, which was going to last for nearly a century and which we're still dealing with today. Number three, look at the people who actually invade the Capitol. These are, and this has not been covered enough, this has not been hit hard enough, these people are basically white supremacists. The white supremacists are leading the way, right? They're leading the way and they're making the argument that this is our house. In other words, what we think is that American government should be in the hands of white people who are willing to be violent about black people.
But Professor Snyder, I wanted to ask you, in terms of, you characterize it more as an attempted coup than perhaps maybe insurrection, because a coup assumes that there was an actual, it seems to me, an actual plot afoot by the coup makers. And in this situation, it appears to be that that Trump egged on the mob clearly, and that it seems to me there's always been a right-wing fascist movement in the United States in search of a leader. I mean, if you go back to Father Coughlin in the 30s, Huey Long, George Wallace, there's always been a significant portion of the American population that has lent itself or seen itself in right-wing and anti-democratic terms, and now they actually have a leader in the White House. So to what degree was this really an opportunism that Trump took advantage of to unleash the mob as opposed to a coup where military leaders or key officials got together to plan an overthrow?
Yeah, I take that point. I mean, I would emphasize, Juan, that it's important that we not get too lost in definitional disagreements about whether we're going to say coup or putsch or insurrection. The American Republic is hanging by a thread because the President of the United States has sought to use violence to stay in power and essentially to overthrow our constitutional system. There's broad agreement about that. I've been calling it a coup for a long time, actually. I mean, for months, for the following reasons, or a coup attempt, to be precise. Because it's been clear for a long time, because Mr. Trump has said so himself, that he intends to stay in power after losing the election. That's been his language for more than 6 months. He's been trying to bring the military into it. That was clear on June the 1st at Lafayette Square. And it's also clear from these repeated statements from today, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a few days ago, the 10 former Secretaries of Defense. The reason why these people have to make these statements is that they're aware that Mr. Trump is trying to get or has a certain amount of support in the military, right? So it's a coup attempt, in my view, because Mr. Trump has said he's going to try to change the nature of the American regime, and he's been trying to use instruments inside American institutions. Now, beyond that, I would point out that this wasn't just a mob. I mean, as you know very well, and as you just said, these aren't just people who happen to be there. These are several different kinds of white supremacist and extreme right-wing paramilitaries who are appearing at the Capitol. They are getting mixed in now with members of the police. And this is extremely dangerous because it's that mixture.
That is some assessments. Overview of what happened. The author said that he actually anticipated this. It was a lot easier for him to write that except because he saw it coming. And the question has been asked from time to time, how come the authorities did not anticipate this? And the answers lie in this was all orchestrated. And we're going to go straight to the line before we get you to answer. Caller 11 Voices. Good day, caller, you're live. Yes?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir. How are you and the family doing over there?
Very good. I'm from the cool and the quiet.
Beautiful, beautiful. Count the blessings. The mic is yours.
If you celebrate New Year and so you have to tell me that we can this is you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the Gregorian calendar in the West says a new year, so we say it's a new year. We don't deal with a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? We straight up, man.
Yeah, so that's why.
So happy New Year to you too.
Straight.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the Ethiopian calendar is different to one in the West. It's not even 2021 in Ethiopia. It's about 20 hours. I mean, about 2,000.
Based on
And
the
then we
calendar.
want to say Happy New Year to all the listeners, Socrates.
Yes, I appreciate that.
And then my logo sign the call for Monster.
I know.
Yeah. No, you have to put in my logo, you know.
Yes,
It's
definitely,
like
definitely.
Mr. Bacchus would have done put me in and said, Mr. Monshot, you know.
Mr.
so
Montserrat,
you can do
welcome. Happy New Year. Lovely hearing from you as usual.
Yeah. My quick question to Kalonji. Kalonji, you believe the end result of one man are either eternal life or eternal punishment?
Eternal life or eternal punishment?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Explain. I don't understand that.
End results after death.
The end result. You believe in judgment day, and after judgment day, one go to eternal life and one go to eternal punishment.
No, that's Western. In African tradition, in our African tradition, right? We say when we go on to the ancestors will protect us and guide us. You see, our tradition is different.
You not believe the judgment day. If while you upon earth, the decision that you make now, as Mary asked, you can get it away.
Well, basically,
one I go to eternal. Anyway, one I go where God be, and the other one I go where Satan be. Not hellfire, go burn the fire and brimstone. You believe in that?
But if somebody believe in that, I respect them. That's their position.
No, you may ask. You believe?
No, I don't believe in that. That's what I'm telling you. African tradition is different to that concept.
Okay, well, make off end the conversation because I will find different ways.
That's what I'm saying. I respect your position.
All right. No, well, me can't go on further because you don't believe in that, so me can't answer the question that me want.
But you could ask any question because if I had a question, I will ask you.
You don't believe in this, so you don't make no sense me answer the question. Right? So let me let somebody else get in.
Okay
then.
All right.
It's great hearing from you and your perspective, but you have to not to continue the conversation. So you say no.
Yeah, as I was saying, you hear how the professor outlined what is basically taking place. And what we are saying is that fascism, because you see, we're dealing with history. I don't like to get into religion. You understand? I deal with objective facts, history. Mussolini invaded Ethiopia in the Second World War. He was a fascist. Hitler killed 6 million Jews. You understand? And nobody said that is white and white crime.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, your 11 voices.
Kalonji, this are from what has divided our people for the longest. It doesn't matter the human person who's emanating word, sound, and power, be it Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or all of the other messiahs who have come amongst our people. We cannot break them down to labels. Because what if a Muslim person will say, well, you see the power of Islam when Malcolm X speaks? Or somebody else, you see the power of atheism? These are the labels that have been bestowed on us, and this is the hindrance of we coming together.
But that's what I'm saying. That's the point I was making to Miss Henry, because she's saying one thing about Christianity. But what I'm saying to you, I respect everybody's religion. Because His Majesty told us that.
With Mrs. Henry, coming trying to put a label, because within the Caribbean, in which I do not go there, even though I speak about the Bible, there is something called Santa Maria.
Yeah.
Right? Where certain African energies disguise themselves because persons, individuals was put in a position, forced to put in a position, you have to come to this assembly. But while at that assembly, the outer court of what they might have labeled and put up front, the core that drives that energy was nothing but what came over here with our people. one of the other things that Mrs. Henry agreed on is that the pictures of Jesus Christ was spiced on us. Now, genuine Christian people who have a genuine love for human souls would not spice something, falsify something on us. If you're presenting something, present it as it's authentic. Otherwise, don't present nothing
But you
at
see,
all.
that's the problem I have with our people who say they're Christians in the West. They reject everything else and say Christianity is the only way.
You see, I deal with them because I have to bring them out of that, because that is where the core of our people are, especially our women, who have such a prominent and pivotal role to play in the continuum of who we are. And yes, so from Amy, the lady Amy interviewed, it drove home the point that I made, that it was a mob that was probably disguised, probably, like other people would jump on the bandwagon, but deep within, and the gentleman was correct. My brothers and sisters, young and old, there is a war. You know the Bible. You see what happened in Genesis, where our heels bruised the head of the reptilian. And you know the Bible. You see what happened in Revelation, where the war it continues. From the very first book of our Bible and the last book, the war continues. But we know, because we have already previewed the movie, to see the end result. So don't get bogged down into religion. We need to move beyond that. Be it Martin Luther King, because he was disguised under Santa Maria, or be it Malcolm X, because he was guised under something else. Those are the labels that we had, and we had to do best with them. But between that, okay, because their book, it's in the Washington Museum, the Slave Bible. We did not have certain privy to certain things that we are seeing in the other Bibles that are here, even though they will falsify it, like saying Cush instead of Ethiopia today. We know that because every other new translation, they exempt something that has given us some vision, some crystal
Africa.
as to who we are.
Africa.
Okay? So,
We got lots to continue with, but we have. You'll be mindful of the
I
time.
do this because I get a lot of people who meet me on the street and tell me, even though I say a sentence, they may not know me. I say a sentence and they say, you is the guy to speak on the radio? Just by uttering. Okay? So I do this because there is a war. If you don't want to know that, you as the individual, you have children and grandchildren who you should be responsible for with their future.
Africa.
But the war continue. And we shall win, but because we are confident in the victory. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And we got about 2 more minutes before we go. We will give you a chance to wrap up.
Yes, Brother Africa was so correct. You see, because the point I was making to Miss Henry is that the Christians them here in our midst, they don't respect no other tradition. We came from Africa with Obio and Voodoo, but no, our oppressors tell them those are evil and
devil worship.
And devil worship.
Yep.
So how are you going to throw away your tradition?
And they quick to drop it on the Haitians.
Exactly.
And they say the reason why Haitians have so much natural disasters is because we work voodoo.
Yes.
Who have more earthquake than Japan?
But not only that, what I'm saying, they forget that Haiti was blockaded and they also had to pay reparations to France, but for freeing themselves.
You're saying they forget. Half of them still don't know.
Okay, then.
And they don't want to know.
Okay. So as we wrap up, brother, that's why I was saying we have to have respect for everybody's religion. As Malcolm said, I'm a Muslim, but I respect your position, I respect your religion. I'm a Christian, but the problem with our people, and that's the point I was making to Miss Henry. True, we've been Christianized from a Western perspective. We dash away our culture. Look here. You see masquerade here, you see the big job. It comes directly out of Nigeria. So we must throw that away to accept somebody else's culture. But even if you do that, even if you have somebody else's culture, at least respect somebody else's culture also.
Okay.
But as
we got about 20 seconds to wrap up today's program.
As we wrap up, my brother, and we have a program here. The 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and one of the main principles is unity. To strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Umoja means staying together, right? Now, what I'm saying, J. Edgar Hoover said some time ago that the biggest what I must say, problem we have in the United States is unification of African people. This is Marcus. The political readjustment of the world means that those who are not sufficiently able, not sufficiently prepared, will be at the mercy of the organized classes for another 100 or 200 years. The only protection against injustice in man is power, physical, financial, and scientific. What Granny said, plant weed, buy local, support your own.
We want to thank all our listeners and viewers for joining us today. For them and the callers who made the contribution, for those who tried to get in and couldn't get in, I want to say thank you very much, and we'll be back with another episode of Voices next Monday. And at some point after that, we're going to have Ras Kalonji back. I try to get Africa to come in.
For the Buckley's Uprising.
Next time, that discussion?
Yeah, the 28th.
28th of next month?
This month.
Of this month?
Yeah, yeah.
If that's next Monday? I have another guest book for next Monday.
Okay, well, we're going to do something.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Once again, thank you all for listening, and God bless you, and hope you have yourself